Yes, thank you so much for the opportunity to put forward some thoughts on the direction of tourism. Today I'll just walk you through Destination Canada's role and our thinking around destination development, as well as our approach to serve communities and the outcomes of our collaborative work. So we're really hopeful that this may help to inform some of the great work that you're doing here already in Prince Edward County. So I'll start off with just a quick word about Destination Canada and what we do. We're a federal crown corporation with the mandate to sustain a vibrant and profitable Canadian tourism industry. And we do this through marketing Canada nationally and internationally by developing insights and analytics to support decision-making, destination development and stewardship, and by building partnerships with the public and private sector across the country and around the globe. And so I'm a senior program manager in the destination development team. I support the eastern half of the country, so everything from Ontario to Newfoundland and Labrador. So why are we having conversations about destination development? This is really top of mind right now. Many of you may have seen our report called the Big Shift Report. It was released in late 2021. The report identified the key trends most likely to have the greatest impact on the sector in the short and the long term. So monitoring and understanding those trends are key because it tells us when we need to take action, how to adapt and prepare for the future. We know that a range of societal and cultural trends have accelerated since the pandemic began, from economy, from talent to capacity. And in terms of key market trends, there's been significant shifts. So communities rising up, responsible travel, remote work, and many others. In times of change, we know that there are often tensions or even the perceptions of tensions between profitability, destination needs, as well as traveler expectations. So we know that in this moment, it definitely exists and it applies across industries. So many are rethinking options, putting new strategies on the table. In tourism, profitability is always part of the equation for governments, for investors, for businesses. On the destination side, we know that residents are more aware than ever how visitors impact their communities. Some really recognize the value of tourism, while others enjoyed having less. So being able to drive down the street to get groceries without crowds or congestion, or really missing the vibrancy that festivals and events brought to communities. For travelers are looking for something enriching. They're more inspired than ever to renew and reconnect. And so ultimately in tourism, these tensions are continuously impacting communities as well as quality of life. So what do we want the future of tourism to look like? Do we want what we had before or something better that future generations can really value? As our industry rebuilds, we have the chance to capture new opportunities as well as address some of those challenges that we all know we faced in the past. So in response, Destination Canada has created a new aspiration. We're striving for tourism that generates wealth and well-being for Canada while enriching the lives of our guests. So increasing business prosperity, strengthening sociocultural vibrancy, and improving environmental thrivability. And while we look forward, we know it's important to still acknowledge that we're very much in recovery mode. But we believe as leaders, it's important for us to think about both recovery and resilience. And that's why we're pursuing a two-track approach, which drives near-term success, but also begins the route towards transformation for long-term growth. So today I'm here to talk about resilience and destination development. To stay competitive in the hosting economy, destinations need marketing to stimulate demand in the short and the midterm, but we also need economic and sociocultural development to really have a healthy environment and strengthen supply for the long term. So our destination development focus is on the second piece, which some call placemaking. So we want tourism to be even better in its next life, more resilient, more profitable, and we really want a national approach so that collectively we can withstand future shocks, improve Canada's competitiveness, enhance well-being in host communities, and really attract the guests that we want to welcome by catalyzing growth that's ongoing and holistic. So we've started the journey and shifted our thinking in some subtle ways. The first is from the visitor economy to the hosting economy. So in the hosting economy, the community is really at the center. Other stakeholders play a crucial role to showcase the essence of that community, its assets, the culture, the sense of pride, which really allows the guest to have an experience that's unique and genuine and be moved by that. The hosting economy is really being recognized now as a community builder, a path to reconciliation, protector of natural assets, and really an enabler of Canada's identity and broader global ambitions. So the important shift here is that we're no longer attracting more international guests to Canada. We're focusing on guests that yield the best return on investment and really help communities to flourish. So we look at this both from a value and values perspective, and we refer to them as our high values guests. So not only which guests are going to improve business prosperity, but also help host communities thrive. And our focus includes how much they spend, but also where they're spending, when, and on what. So destination development is really about communities that want tourism, that want it to be planned and intentional. And so when we have conversations across the country, we're learning about destinations and considering all of these elements here on the screen. So they're really the essentials and the considerations that need to be thought about when planning to receive guests. So the elements span from environmental integrity, the development and ongoing maintenance of infrastructure, access, amenities, collaboration across various stakeholders and stewards, and the workforce to ensure the delivery of it all. So it's really about transforming communities by enhancing and identifying the attributes and contributing to economic regeneration using tourism as the catalyst. So what is the opportunity? With a more holistic approach, we can improve the benefits that tourism provides to Canadians and to destinations, also improving the bottom line at the same time. So reconnecting people with each other, reconnecting people with nature, and elevating the role of communities of all sizes. So we know that tourism is more than just a standalone industry. And that's really why the regenerative approach is the way forward. It recognizes that the hosting economy is complex, it's continually changing, and under the right conditions can benefit more stakeholders. So to achieve this approach, whether it's regionally, nationally, provincially, we have to be thinking holistically and cultivate destinations and experiences that really provide pride of place and help communities flourish. So we're thinking about neighborhoods, municipalities, watersheds, routes and corridors, and beyond. So to help our organization on this path, we worked with two thought leaders, Bill Reid and Michelle Holliday, to develop a regenerative framework for destinations across the country. Bill Reid is a recognized planning and sustainability consultant, and Michelle Holliday is a globally recognized thought leader who centers her work around thrivability, which is a set of perspectives and principles that are based on the view that communities and organizations are dynamic living systems. So this framework is really a starting point to energize this regenerative process. It includes 5 principles that I'll just walk you through briefly, but the framework itself will be released in the coming months. So the first principle is place. Working at the scale of place is really important because it helps us to understand and really see the impact that we're having. And to do this, we need to know the broader landscape. So thinking beyond oneself or enterprise or a specific project and looking at the larger context and relationships that are at play. So looking at natural boundaries, whether that's a neighborhood or a watershed where diverse participants and activities exist. And the outcome here is to really have a defined sense of place. The second principle is stories about the place. So this involves really building knowledge of the place and its history by speaking to elders or indigenous peoples and really recording those stories. Asking others, what do you love about this place? What does it mean to the people that live in it? And asking ourselves, what do I love about this place? What would help me flourish and enable this place to flourish? In RTO4 right now, a collection of people from elders, academics, the business community are coming together to reacquaint themselves with the history of the Grand River watershed through shared storytelling. This will enable the eventual development of experiences for guests to connect with more deeply and learn about that area. The third is people. So the starting point is to really ask who's interested, who's committed, who's invested, who's already taking initiative. So this is the chance for people with the shared energy and interest to come together to begin this type of work. And this is already happening here and in many places across the country. When discovering and cultivating these relationships, it's important to think back to the elements of destination development that I just showed the slide a few minutes ago. There are so many different topics from agri-food systems, cultural integrity, as well as career paths. So there's a spot for many different people to be involved. And then the fourth is really putting things into action and keeping at it in order to see change in the community. So how do we do this? Invite people to consider what really motivates them at a core level, inviting conversation between colleagues so we can help draw out new perspectives, and exploring opportunities that might allow a network of people to develop with complementary skills and passions that can really add value to the process. So this really creates a ground for personal development, which is really integral to the healthy evolution of place. In the Upper Bay of Fundy, New Brunswick, a stakeholders summit was held last fall, which really talked about their destination development process that was undertaken over a 2-year period. Since that summit, a series of action networks have formed in labor, housing, and infrastructure. And they're developing plans to move forward with those really big topics that felt really too complex and complicated to take on in isolation. And so lastly, it's a practice, so it does require practicing. When this happens, a stewardship circle is formed from a diversity of community members who really understand the needs and the health of the whole system. And this is just not possible when entities are acting in isolation or remaining that way. Passion groups participate, so this could be business associations or resident groups with really diverse areas of interest like climate change, habitat health, mobility, or social justice. And host teams form from individuals or businesses. And this is really where products or services or contributions get developed. So lastly, how do we know that change is taking place and how do we measure it? As we explored a regenerative approach with a lens on tourism, we really wanted to expand to deeper, more holistic indicators beyond arrivals or GDP or hotel occupancy. So our path took us to the UN Sustainable Development Goals, Canada's own Quality of Life Framework, and Nonprofit Capital Institute's Regenerative Economy. So these all have valuable merits, but in order for it to be closely aligned with tourism and our aspiration for the sector, we came up with our own approach and 6 top-line outcomes. So to guide this, we've created the wealth and well-being outcomes. 5 of them are focused on residents, and 1 is focused on the guest. Indigenous agency is applied to all 6 of these. So right now we're at the stage where we've socialized these 6 to some partners and communities, and we're looking to create metrics. So I'll just provide a bit of color to each of them quickly. For tourism businesses are prosperous, we're seeking to measure business vitality. So is there a healthy ecosystem of businesses that depend on each other to thrive? Are destinations able to attract investment and resources to enable their aspirations for their business community? And do profits generated stay for the benefit and provide amenities for the community? Are local suppliers being used? The second one is seeking to measure job quality. So has tourism created enough potential or a climate that students and others in the workforce really see it as a career which can be pursued rather than an entry-level job? And are these jobs attractive to all people across the country, whether it's in urban, rural, or remote communities? And are we considering all of the jobs that aren't typically associated with tourism? So carpenters that build museum exhibits, accountants, or park rangers. For local cultures thrive, we're seeking to measure cultural vibrancy. So culture can mean many different things to people, from sports or literature, museums, music, food. Do residents have a sense of pride, and how do they feel about sharing this all with the people that visit? In order to measure environmental thrivability, we're seeking to understand what is tourism's contribution to the environment, and our actions or business decisions making a difference in the biodiversity index, the community, quality of air, or helping to achieve other broader goals set by government. Next, we have infrastructure. So we want to know about infrastructure that's a catalyst for tourism, but also infrastructure that's a catalyst for capacity and competitiveness in communities. And then the sixth outcome is what we do to plan and prepare for the guests. So how does it impact them? What experiences really lead to the memory of their visit or inform how they choose to spend their time, their money, and what they do? So just in terms of this outcome framework, we're landing on metrics for measurement right now. And to address this challenge and its complexity, we're working with communities across the country to come up with some innovative solutions that can be shared across. So what is the path forward for Canada and for our team? To address these outcomes, we are working through 3 lanes of engagement. The first is thought leadership, so that we can share knowledge, practices, and learning, foster innovation, speaker events like this one. The second is strategy, so we're working closely with communities to be able to enable their strategies, catalyze connections, and advance implementation. We're seeking to identify and make available information about investment programs and resources. And in measurement, in line with thinking holistically, we're continuing to pursue the wealth and well-being framework so that we can offer language and guidance across the country. We know that a lot of these things are happening already, provincially or regionally, and so we're really focused on being able to align our efforts together so that we can pursue initiatives across the country, exchange information, have more concerted research. So I'll just walk you through a couple initiatives that we've launched recently. A knowledge hub was created. We're looking to put up all things destination development, so whether it's case studies, thought-provoking papers, research, regenerative approaches and models. Next, we've established a national working group. It's a forum for thought leadership throughout the country. We currently have 15 to 20 really passionate individuals involved. And then last, we're planning to apply GIS mapping to Canada's tourism sector so that we can enable us to understand the location of clusters better, their stage of development and comparative characteristics. It's really going to be a central repository of intelligence that we can combine with on-the-ground knowledge that will help to enhance what's already available in decision making. And so lastly, we know we have a new starting place for businesses to operate differently, for travelers to choose differently, And we feel that now is the time for industry leaders to come together for this new aspiration for tourism to rebuild profitability and create more resilience. So that is it for me. Thank you for your time.
I just want to say thank you. It's so great to see what Destination Canada is doing, and that you can see there's alignment with where Visit the County is going and with Destination Canada's vision. I also just wanted to mention I'm the Vice Chair of the Tourism Industry Association of Ontario, so I get to bring all of the knowledge that I get from the provincial level to share with Eleanor and the board. And as a national organization now, we're also involved with all of the other national organizations, and we'll be collectively meeting with Minister Boissonnault at the federal level in April with Destination Canada's leadership. So I think that's important that the board and the staff are connected in many different ways with what's going on, not only locally, but regionally and provincially and nationally. And if you hadn't already heard, there's a really great symposium coming up called the Impact Summit. So it's the first time it's leaving BC. It's typically held in Victoria in February, and it's coming to Kingston May 7th to 9th. So if you haven't heard about it already, I know we were sharing it in our newsletter that you're opening every month when you get it, right? But I know it's heading into the season, but would be remiss if I didn't say to check out the Impact Summit, because it's a really great opportunity to learn more how you as an operator can actually shift what you're doing within your organization to help meet those sustainable development goals. But thanks, Erica. We really appreciate that, and we're excited to see how the meter goes along and how we can help you collect that data and help move the national goals forward. So thanks again.
Thank you. It is my great pleasure now to introduce our second speaker. Joe Baker is a multi-passionate entrepreneur within Canada's tourism and hospitality and education sectors, and a vocal advocate for an inclusive, future-forward industry. He is CEO at Joe Baker & Co., a consultancy specializing in thought leadership, human capital, and operational excellence. Joe was recently named Global Ambassador for Landsby, a first-of-its-kind collection of Canadian tourism experiences. He was previously Dean at Centennial College's School of Hospitality, Tourism and Culinary Arts, where he led the most meaningful transformation in the school's over 50-year history. Joe has held senior management roles at George Brown College's Center for Hospitality and Culinary Arts, including Director of Operations, Services and Partnerships. Before joining higher education, he worked in hotels and managed restaurants. He has a Master's of Education in Higher Education Leadership, a Bachelor's of Commerce in Hospitality and Tourism Management, an extensive executive education and certification. Joe serves proudly on the Board of Directors for Tourism HR Canada, the Tourism Industry Association of Ontario, and Cooperative and Work Integrated Learning Canada. Please welcome President and CEO of Joe Baker & Co., Joe Baker.
Do you want to use this? Okay.
Does that work?
Works for me, as long as there's no weird interference.
Okay, I'll let Erica.
Okay. Beard and long hair, right? It's got its technical challenges for sure. All right, let's see how this goes. How's everybody doing? It is nice to see everyone. I was also out here the last time when we canceled, but once I got here and you all canceled, I just decided to stay. So, I mean, you know, while in the county, right? Isn't that what you all want me to do? Stay. So thank you very much for this opportunity. Eleanor, it's incredible to get everybody together. I have 3 goals for you today. My first goal is ultimately to help you think a little bit. Secondly, I want you to reflect. And thirdly, we're going to take some action, first in this room, and then obviously when this room dissipates and we all go into continuing on with our lives. It's been a difficult few years, I'd say. We've all dealt with a lot of change, personally, professionally, and I think especially when we listen to what Erica's talking about and the change that Destination Canada is sort of predicting, we have a lot of change still to come ahead of us. So the good thing is we can learn about change. There are things that we already know and there are things that we can apply in terms of moving our way forward. Love this quote. My presentation today is going to be filled with a bunch of Easter eggs, so you can do some research and do some reading later on. This is a quote from Robin Sharma. Anybody ever read or heard of Robin Sharma? Yeah. Brilliant Canadian author, speaker, leadership guru type of person. All change is hard at first, messy in the middle, and gorgeous at the end. Gives us a little bit of a roadmap, doesn't it? We can reflect on our own lives, the changes that we've engaged in. Yeah, it's difficult at the beginning. And it gets kind of messy. And then eventually we get to that place where it gets to gorgeous. And so I want to spend a little bit of time today talking about change that's affected us individually, change that's affected our industry. Way back in the year 2021, in this little publication called the New York Times, the number one read story of the entire year was on a little piece written by author Adam Grant, we'll get to him too, about languishing. And why it was so significant was because he put a word and a concept around something that a lot of us were feeling. It was that sense of blah, that sense that we're a little bit stuck and probably that we're a little bit isolated at that point, 2021. Languishing is actually really important to reflect on as individuals, within our organizations, within our communities, because it impacts a lot of the darker parts of our lives. So what is languishing? There it is, sense of stagnation, sense of emptiness. It's something that we all very much go through, again, personally and professionally in our own lives and within our businesses. The good thing is, since 2021, we have moved on a little bit, and the development of some of the research and the development of some of the literature tells us that there's an antidote to languishing. So if you're ever feeling or experiencing languishing in your life, personally or professional, there's an antidote. This is the antidote to languishing. Belonging. Interesting, right? And belonging is actually finding its way into some of the terminology around diversity, equity, inclusivity, right? When we can create that sense of belonging for ourselves, for our small communities in our homes, for our larger communities where we work. And that gives you the opportunity to both create a sense of belonging around what's happening within your business, but it should also give you the sense that you belong to something that's actually much bigger than yourselves. You belong to an industry. You belong to a community. You belong to subsectors of an even larger industry. And I think that's what this collection and this gathering and this organization is all about. Building that sense of belonging within the businesses, but also within the community, and making sure that we can move forward together and thrive. So that's what we're going to talk a little bit about today. 3 things, 3 focus areas in the time that we have. We're going to look at some of the numbers just to get a sense of this great industry that we're all a part of, because sometimes the numbers and the data really help paint that vivid picture. We're going to talk about reinvention. We're going to talk about change. We're going to talk about the things that we know about change that we can apply to our personal lives and to our professional lives so we can get to where we want to go. And then we're going to take a little action. We're going to have a little fun. That mostly involves you. So just enjoy this part where you get to sit back and relax, because there's something at the end of this for you. So, by the numbers, how big is Canada's hospitality and tourism industry? Well, we are in fact a $100 billion plus industry. Across this country, in a healthy year, we generate, the visitor economy is more than $104 billion. Way back in 2019, before things changed for us dramatically, we were at $104.9 billion, a very significant part of Canada's economy. So what we do here, everything that happens within your businesses rolls up and aggregates to that $100 billion level. It's a big industry. This year, 2022, looking backwards, the analysts are still working on it. That's why there's that little asterisk there. This is what people are predicting, about 80% of 2019. And especially when you heard Erica and Destination Canada talk about getting back to, pre-pandemic levels, everybody is sort of using that 2019 number as a bit of a benchmark. And so they're predicting and saying, all right, well, 2022, 80%, and some already, DC is certainly saying by 2024 or 2025, we'll return to that kind of pre-pandemic level. So again, that just gives us a sense of where we are and how we're fighting our way back. How big is the industry going to be? These are pretty ambitious goals set by some of our organizations, Destination Canada, Tourism Industry Association of Canada. By 2030, we have some pretty lofty economic goals. $142 billion. Considering that we're sitting at about 80-ish, we got a lot of work to do and a lot of upward trajectory to kind of handle and to process, right? And scaling up and all those things. But this just gives you a sense of where this industry collectively is going. Well, how many people does it take to make all of that happen? There are more than 2 million people in this country employed in the hospitality and tourism industry. And that represents about 1 in 10 or 1 in 11, depending on which numbers you're looking at. 1 in 10 working people in this country works in our industry. Pretty interesting, right? I think that's a very significant part of our workforce. In some of the challenging times over the last few years, as many as 800,000 of those 2 million were displaced as a result of the pandemic. I mean, it's really, we've heard that, some of our colleagues at the national level, hardest hit businesses, the hardest hit coalition, you lived through it, hard hit, absolutely. So hardest hit and maybe one of the slowest to recover, right? As we try to get back to that kind of balance of all of it. Healthy economics, healthy workforce. There's still, to this day, first quarter of 2023, anywhere between 150,000 to 200,000 jobs in this sector, in this industry across the country without workers. 150 to 200,000 jobs without workers. Back to the beginning. If you are experiencing challenges with workforce, at the very least, you're not alone, right? We're kind of going through it together. We're coming together, we're trying to figure it out, but that's what's happening here is what's happening, across the country and many reasons in many places around the world. This is how that breaks out there. Just give you an interesting sense. We talk about the 2 million people who work in this industry. This is the breakdown. These are the 5 subsectors of Canada's tourism industry. You get really into the data and into the numbers, it gets really interesting, but it just gives you a sense. And I think what's interesting about this list is if you asked all 2 million of these people what industry they worked in, do you think they'd all have the same answer? No. What do you mean? Well, I work for the airlines. I work in the airline industry. I work in the restaurant industry. I work in the hotel industry. We also have a really interesting kind of, it's great, the diversity of our businesses. So it makes us unique. It's what makes us compelling. But it makes it a little bit challenging when we try to stitch it all together, right? So that's just where we're at there. Remembering where we're trying to get to by 2030, $142 billion. How many people is it going to take to get to that? 2.5 million people by 2030. And again, these are projections. This is Destination Canada, TIAC, other organizations sitting around trying to figure out how we get to the level that we need to get to. So we have a lot of work to do. We've got to find us some people We got to get us some business, maybe make a positive impact on our local community, on our environment, right? Speaking of, carbon footprint of the hospitality and tourism industry is a little harder to measure this by country. I mean, some people do, but I think it's sort of the air is the air and the sea is the sea and the land is the land, right? Benchmark study in 2018, lots of researchers from around the world were pulled together. The hospitality and tourism industry produces 8% of global greenhouse gas emissions. That is a lot. So it's just to say that we have our work cut out for us, right? We do have targets within our own country. Our targets are to reduce greenhouse gases by 40 to 45% of 2005 levels by 2030. And, there's a little thing at the bottom there, right? Net zero emissions by 2050. I mean, you see the direction, you see the trajectory that is being laid out here for us, right? Where on earth do we go from here? Lots of discussion about regenerative tourism and sustainability. I always come back to this definition because to me, this makes sense to me. Way back, 1987, United Nations, as they started to develop Sustainable Development Goals, this is how they define sustainability, right? Meeting the needs of the present without compromising the ability of future generations to meet their own needs. Don't we all want that? We wanted that for ourselves. We want that for our next generation, whoever that is, family, friends, community, right? That we can achieve our goals within the span of our lifetime without compromising the future ability to achieve their own goals. So that is a definition of sustainability that I like to use because it makes sense to me. Everybody has their own regenerative tourism, and regenerative economies and agriculture and all those things. It's certainly a level up. The good news is, this really refreshing to see organizations like Destination Canada and their CEO, Marsha Walden, to start to talk about that the future of Canada's tourism industry includes all of those elements, right? It's not just about the economic impact. We all want a healthy, robust economy. Yes, of course we do. But I think we can make headway on making a positive impact on the environment, or at the very least, a less negative impact on the environment, and a positive impact on our society. The socioeconomic part of what we do. You heard Rebecca talk about that a little bit. So that's the direction that we're going in. And I think it's interesting because that requires us to engage in change making, right? We cannot do the same things that we've been doing for a number of years into the future and expect that we're going to achieve a different result. Things have completely changed for a lot of reasons. Some things were a result of the pandemic, and some things sped up because of the pandemic. Some of the things that we were experiencing, especially within our workforce, they just accelerated during the pandemic. So how do we move our way forward? Change can sometimes be a little ambiguous. How do we create change? How do we create transformation? I like to think about it as reinvention. And I'll tell you why. Reinvention can sometimes get a bad rap. Yep, scrap everything we did before and go in a completely new direction. That's not actually what reinvention is about. Many individuals have reinvented themselves. Hands up if you've ever reinvented yourself. Some part of your career, some part of your life. Yeah, exactly. We've been through this, right? We got this. But there's some interesting theory here that we can put into practice. You see, reinvention has two components when you think about it, right? There's the re. What does re mean? Repeat, reiterate, reflect, right? Do it again and again and again and again. And the invention, reinvention. What is invention? Invention is your original idea. The original idea of you as an individual. Maybe you came up with that yourself, maybe your family did, maybe society did. The original idea of your business. What were you doing when you started? So to reinvent yourself or to reinvent your business, to create change, to create transformation, it's about reiterating your original idea, to refine it, to make it better, to make it more relevant for the present day. It is not about scrapping everything and starting again. That's not reinvention. That's just completely new. Reinvention, their Easter egg number 2, Joe Jackman, another Canadian author, very interesting. I actually heard him speak for the first time at the Restaurants Canada show way back before the world knew what COVID-19 was all about. So he was talking about reinvention before it really even hit us. How do you thrive in an era of disruption? And for sure, we are living in an era of disruption. Some of that was theoretical before the world that we experience now, right? Change is everywhere and it's coming for us fast. Reinvention is about getting ahead of the forces in the world that just make you change. Something is going to inevitably come along and make you change. Reinvention is about getting ahead of that, right? Who needs to reinvent? So how on earth are we going to reinvent this industry? Who needs to reinvent hospitality and tourism? 3 levels: tourism professionals, tourism businesses, and the tourism industry at large. This is a collective effort. If we are not all engaging in the process of reinvention, then we just don't have as much of a likelihood to succeed. But we reinvent in different ways. Tourism professionals need to learn new skills, develop new skills. Don't we know that for the requirements of operating in today's economy, in today's life, today's society? Businesses need to reinvent their strategies. We can't do things the same way we always did them. We need to do them differently. And ideally, at the highest level, we're starting to see some of that really important work coming through. The tourism industry at large needs to reinvent its policies. Saw some big policy announcements earlier about some changes to immigration and temporary foreign workers and some of those other things. Those are great policies, and you start to see some of our advocacy organizations really pushing for some of those policy changes. But this is how we need to do it. Notice that this is not a hierarchy. This is all of us collectively working together. So if we are going to truly reinvent the hospitality and tourism industry, that's who needs to be involved. Reinvention, change-making, transformation contains 3 elements. There are 3 things present in every reinvention you have ever done for yourself, you have ever helped anybody else with, and a reinvention that you're trying to create right now. Resiliency, lots about that in Erica's presentation. Vulnerability, ooh, that makes me a little uncomfortable. And adaptive capacity. Let's talk about what those are. What on earth is resiliency? This is me a lot of the time. We use these words all the time. Regenerative. I'm like, gee, what on earth is regenerative? How do I figure out, what is resiliency? Let's go back to the experts. Here he is, Dr. Adam Grant, social psychologist, professor at Wharton University, author, speaker, amazing podcast, Work-Life Balance. He says, resiliency is the strength and speed of our response to adversity. Interesting. Resiliency is a key component in reinvention because resiliency is actually a skill that you can develop. You've been developing it your whole life. Anybody ever face adversity at all in their lives whatsoever? Right. You got through it. You're here. Here you are, right? You develop your resiliency by facing and overcoming adversity. Doesn't mean you should thrust yourself in the face of adversity as often as possible so you can be really resilient. That might be a bit much, but, here we are. We're sitting in this room in 2023. This industry is still here. You're still here. You all look healthy. We're lucky to be here, right? This is resiliency. So no matter what part of change, transformation, reinvention you're trying to create in your life or in your business, you need resiliency. So some of you might be sitting there going, well, I have a pretty big team. Yes, good news. You can help them develop their resiliency too. Second thing, adaptive capacity. This is a me word. This is a me thing. Have you ever met somebody in your personal life or your professional life who absolutely could not get themselves to change? Couldn't get themselves to the next level? Personally, professionally, I like to pick on Blockbuster Video or Kodak or BlackBerry. Anybody got a BlackBerry? right? Like, yeah, there you go. Good for you. Hold on to that, yeah. But, so adaptive capacity is the ability of an individual or a group to actually realize the change, right? And again, the simple nature that we're sitting here and talking about what we're talking about is you've brought yourself through change. And I'll give you a nice example of how adaptive capacity blends into this. But you have to engage with yourself as an individual, with your team, with your community. You have to help people realize the change. First and foremost, recognizing that we are trying to create change or that we are trying to adapt because change was forced upon us, right? Every reinvention in the history of time has had resiliency, adaptive capacity, and vulnerability. Sometimes this can be scary, right? Vulnerability. Here's another Easter egg, Brene Brown. I bet lots of you have heard of her, yes? Good. Amazing TED Talks, all of them do, great speakers. Vulnerability is embracing uncertainty, risk, and exposure. It's that embracing part that's a little difficult. Anybody who has ever created reinvention in their lives or anybody who has ever created reinvention in their business has learned to embrace the uncertainty. You heard Rebecca at the very top talking about, love listening to your long, rich history, right? You can't get where you are today without embracing some of that uncertainty. All right, I don't know what's going to happen, and things are definitely going to change, but let's keep going. Let's find our way through this, right? The opposite of vulnerability is perfection. Isn't that interesting? Oh, yeah, everything's great. Remember that world that we used to live in? It's called everything before 2019, right? Everything's fine. How are you? I'm fabulous. Oh, not really, but right. So when we hold on to perfection, the generational stuff where some of us were brought up or taught to believe that, you project that everything is fine, like everybody who works in the hospitality industry. Everything's fine. Kitchen's on fire, bank account's empty, no staff. Everything's great. We're doing this. We got this, right? Yeah, sure. Probably from a business strategy, you want to keep that together in front of your guests. But point is, you need to have a space to do this, right? You need to have a space to say, oh my God, things aren't great. How are we going to figure it out? How do we move forward, right? But it's about embracing it. And when you start to embrace it, what happens? It kind of gets infectious. It's contagious. You want to nut the bad stuff, the really enthusiastic stuff, right? Things are changing. I'm okay with that. Let's get out there. Let's see what happens, right? So, and if you ever need a reminder post this discussion and you're kind of thinking, oh, what was all that talk about reinvention? Reinvention is most present in the natural environment, which is great because here in the county you have an abundance of that, even if it's snow and ice. It's still natural. You think about resiliency as everything that's under the ground, right? Under that soil line. Resiliency is roots, right? The speed and the strength of your response to adversity comes from lived experience, comes from life, right? You draw on past experiences, hopefully positive or negative ones that you've turned into positive ones, right? That happens below the soil line. Adaptive capacity, what's another word for adaptive capacity in this natural space? Realizing change, growth. Look at the little seedling, right? Everything that's above that soil line, that's adaptive capacity, your ability to actually realize the change. And vulnerability, embracing uncertainty, risk, and exposure, also known as the elements. The sun, the warmth, the water, the rain, another animal, another plant. Development. Not good, right? So the natural environment is filled with reminders of us that reinvention contains these three things. These three things you can all control. You can develop them, you can work on them, you can think about them, you can reflect on them, you can put them into practice. You can navigate your way through reinvention to arrive at a place that you want to arrive. So why on earth should we even bother reinventing hospitality and tourism? Because of this. The surest way to stay true to who you are. Again, we're not throwing the baby out with the bathwater. company, brand, or even individual is to reinvent so as to continually become the most powerful and relevant version of yourself. That is what reinvention is all about. Becoming the most powerful and relevant version of yourself as an individual, as a business, as a community, as an industry. We are reinventing so that we can show up in 2023 and then 2024 and 2025 and we can thrive, being the best versions of who we are. Okay, make sense? Got it? Fabulous, perfect, okay. Right? Right? Nothing but a series of choices followed by a series of consequences, for better and for worse sometimes. I hope you all have a fabulous rest of day. Thank you very much for giving me the privilege to be here with you. I hope we can stay in touch. This is meant to be a conversation. This is meant to be a relationship. Some people that I already know, some people that I don't know yet. This is how you find me. If you want to find me, it's pretty easy. Those are all of my things all built into one nifty little spot. And I really genuinely wish you nothing but success as we all collectively move forward to reinvent Canada's hospitality and tourism industry. So thank you very much.
Awesome. Wonderful. Thank you, Joe. Thank you to the advanced group. Don't tell the next